They say weddings are about new beginnings. But not mine. Not this one. This one was about endings. And not the loud kind, no screaming or slammed doors. This was the quiet end. The kind you feel in your chest before it even happens. Like a ship cracking underwater. You don't see it yet. But you know the hull's gone. It was Sean's voice that broke it open. My stepson. Kristen's boy. 25 years old and already wearing a tux like armor. His face flushed with too much champagne and too little thought. He stood, teetering a bit, holding a flute of You've Clickwhat. The expensive kind I bought because Kristen said it would mean something. He raised his glass and said it loud, too loud. Just so everyone knows. I've got a real dad. The silence after that felt designed, engineered to hurt. Then came the laughter. Not all at once, but rippling, spreading like rot. A few gasps, a couple nervous chuckles. Some real laughs too, from the tables furthest from me. People who probably never learned my name. I heard one of them say, "Damn, bold," like it was impressive. Kristen didn't look at me, didn't wince, didn't shift in her seat like someone who'd just seen a man humiliated at her own wedding. No, she leaned into it. "Honesty matters," she said, calm, almost warm. And people nodded like she'd said something wise. I didn't say a word. Not because I couldn't, because there was nothing left to say. I took a sip of water. Cold, flat, set the glass down, pushed my chair back. Slow enough not to draw attention but firm enough to mean done. A few people turned to watch. Someone whispered my name. Someone else raised a phone, maybe trying to catch a reaction. There's always someone hoping to go viral. I walked out of the tent. Past the rented white roses, past the catered bar, past the DJ booth where some kid with a man bun was queuing up earth, wind, and fire. I walked out like I had somewhere better to be. I didn't. The parking lot gravel crunched under my dress shoes. The ones Kristen made me buy, said my old ones were too tired. I found my car, sat in the driver's seat with the door open. Didn't turn on the engine, just sat. The music faded into the night behind me. The laughter, too. The kind of laughter that sticks. That stays in your ear longer than it should. I watched the venue. The lights. The people dancing. Toasting. Smiling. Eating. None of them knew what they were laughing at. Not really. They thought it was a joke. They thought I was just a stepdad. Just another background prop in someone else's story. But the funny thing about being the one in the background is you see everything. Weeks before the wedding, I'd already felt it. The shifting tone. The way Kristen spoke to me like I was the contractor, not the groom. "I already sent the deposits," she'd say. "The planner just needs your card again. Always your card. Always my name on the line, my money in motion." But the story, the spotlight, that was theirs. Kristen's family was large, loud, church-going, upper Minnesota types. Big on real dads. Sean had always kept me at arm's length. Always called me Mike, when he remembered to call me anything at all. Years of bills, car repairs, late-night bailouts. None of it earned me more than a nod across the room. 2 months ago, he said it to my face. "You're not family. You're just mom's guy." I'd fixed his truck the night before. Kristen laughed when he said it. "He didn't mean it," she told me later, resting her hand on my arm. "You know how he is." Yeah. I knew, and I knew how she was too. So I made the call. Quiet, calm. The kind of call that doesn't raise suspicion. Just a conversation with the bank. "I want to set up a freeze," I said. The woman on the other end asked if there was fraud. "No," I replied. "Just a change in management." She walked me through it. I signed the forms. Added a trigger. If this specific terminal, the one assigned to the catering service at the venue, requests a charge on the day of the wedding, the transaction will fail. System alert. Internal lock. Quiet. Clean. No flags. No alarms. Just a red screen and confusion. It was never about revenge. It was about math. Investment. Return. Respect. I had funded this family like a venture. Time, energy, money. Decades of it. And what I got in return was a toast. A public execution disguised as a punchline. So I sat in my car and waited. Not with anger. With clarity. About 20 minutes later, the ripple hit. People returned to the bar. Tried to swipe their cards. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. Someone tried Venmo. The bar manager said, "The system's frozen. Can't run anything." A few people laughed it off. First. But panic never starts with screaming. Starts quiet. It starts with uncertainty. With repetition. With someone saying, "That's weird." And someone else saying, "Try mine." And then a third voice, more nervous now, saying, "Wait, what do you mean it's not working?" The bartender shrugged. "It's all on one account. Whoever booked it. It's bouncing." Someone looked around. "Where's Mike?" Kristen was still at her table. I saw her through the glass, tilting her head like she couldn't quite understand what was happening. Sean stood behind her, looking confused. Angry. He pulled out his phone, probably trying to log in to some payment app that wouldn't matter. And then it really began. The wedding planner came rushing over to the DJ. The music dipped. The lights flickered once, just enough for people to notice. A woman at table 7 called her husband over in a whisper. The groomsmen were huddled by the bar. One of them had his hands in his hair like he was trying to wake himself up from a dream. Kristen stood slowly. She was saying something to the planner, then pointing toward the parking lot. People turned, looking, but I was already pulling away. Not fast, just steady, like a man leaving a dinner party he never really belonged to. I didn't need to slam the door or burn the place down. I'd already closed the tab. You want to make a joke about who the real dad is? Fine. But real dads pay the bills. And now they'd see what it costs when the one who always paid doesn't. I never liked games. Not board games. Not card games. Not the kinds that start with "don't take this the wrong way" and end with someone pretending they were just joking. I like numbers, systems, promises in writing. That's what I built my business on: structure, discipline, clean math. And I saw the cracks long before the wedding. It started with the invoices. Kristen said the venue was already handled, but the charges were routed through my email. Each line item came marked urgent. Caterers, DJs, tent rentals, security deposits. Her voice would stay light. "Don't stress, babe, it's just a formality." But somehow the payments always ended up under my name. She wasn't lying. She just wasn't telling the full truth. And silence can be more dangerous than a lie. I watched the charges pile up. $1,200 for table arrangements. $800 for signature cocktails. $3,400 for the photography package with drone footage no one would watch. Paid them, quietly, out of the account tied to my company, an S-corp I built from scratch. I had learned a long time ago that Kristen liked things that looked effortless. That meant I had to do the efforting in secret. She didn't want to talk about budgets. She wanted to talk about linens, florals, her dress. "You get to marry me," she said once, laughing. "You don't need to worry about the costs." That line stuck with me, not because it was funny, because it was a warning. Sean was the same way, always smiling, always smirking, always on the edge of respect but never crossing into it. He borrowed the car I restored, a '92 Volvo I rebuilt by hand, but he never thanked me. Not once. Drove it until the brakes wore thin, brought it back with fast food wrappers stuffed between the seats, and said, "She still works." Like he'd done me a favor by not crashing it. I covered his college books for 2 semesters. I paid the final balance on his undergraduate loans when his father ghosted. No ceremony. No acknowledgement. Just a quiet transaction, like I was an ATM that walked and answered emails. He never called me anything but Mike. Once he called me Mom's guy, not even in anger, just in passing. Like a label, like a brand he didn't bother peeling off. Kristen let it slide. Always. There's a particular kind of betrayal that doesn't feel like a knife. Feels like erosion. Slow. Constant. It wears you down year after year, moment after moment, until one day you realize the man you used to be has been ground into something smaller, quieter, more useful to everyone but himself. That's when I made the plan. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I made a checklist. Paper trail. I called my bank, the corporate division. Spoke to a woman named Teresa. She sounded kind but clinical. I explained what I needed. Full control, temporary lockouts, and a trigger to halt specific transactions tied to a list of vendor codes. May I ask why? She said. No fraud, I replied. Just clarity. She walked me through the settings. Account holds. Pre-authorization flags. Legal control language. I signed everything. Dotted every I. I included a clause. If any attempt is made to charge this specific wedding terminal on June 11th, the account goes into immediate freeze. I requested that no notifications be sent until 48 hours after the event. I didn't want to fight. I wanted silence. Paper silence. Because I knew how it would go. Sean would make his joke. Kristen would co-sign it. The guests would laugh. I'd walk out. They'd go on without me. Toasts, dancing, cake. And then, when it came time for the bar tab to process, when the final balance of the party needed to clear, they'd find the system blinking red. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I needed them to understand what I'd been carrying all along. You can't play games with someone who built the table. In the weeks before the wedding, I went quieter. Kristen assumed I was nervous. Cold feet, she called it. Smiled and kissed my cheek like she was brushing away a thought. But I wasn't nervous. I was done. There was no panic in me anymore. Only precision. I showed up to the fittings. I nodded when the planner explained the color palettes. I sat through family dinners where Sean recounted stories about his real dad. The man who missed birthdays, skipped tuition, called only when he needed something. The man whose only contribution to this wedding was showing up and shaking hands like he hadn't skipped half of Sean's life. I watched it all, and said nothing, because I knew what was coming. I knew that the only way some people understand weight is by having it dropped on them. Kristen wanted a wedding that felt earned. She used that word a lot. Earned. As if love were something you tallied like points. As if I hadn't already earned this family 10 times over. When we met, she was rebuilding. Her words. Starting fresh. I paid for the new start. Helped her out of debt. Got Sean into the school he wanted. Bought her mother a new air conditioning unit. Never complained. Never asked for credit. I didn't want applause. I wanted a seat at the table. A name on the page. But every time I got close, someone reminded me. Quietly, or with a joke, that I was a supporting actor in their story. Even the seating chart for the wedding placed me on the side. Not at the center. Not even at the head table. Kristen said it was to keep things simple. Her ex-husband would be near Sean, and it would be awkward otherwise. So I sat 4 seats away from the son I helped raise. 3 seats from the woman I was supposed to be marrying. It's funny what people will justify in the name of convenience. It's funny what people will forgive, as long as the bills are paid. The night before the wedding, I double-checked the account settings. One final review. Everything in place. The florist, the planner, the DJ, all under my business account. All rigged to fail. It wasn't sabotage. It was honesty, the kind they said mattered so much during that toast. You're not the real dad. Honesty matters. Good. Let's be honest, then. Let's be honest about who funded the fairy tale. Who built the bridge they danced across. Who set the table they laughed around while serving mockery disguised as charm. Let's see what happens when the man they never thanked finally steps back. They thought I wouldn't. They thought I was too invested. Too proud. Too used to being used. But that's the problem with games. People get too comfortable when they think they're winning. They forget the other player can fold. Can walk away, can flip the board. They forget that some of us were never playing. We were keeping score. The first call came at 9:04 a.m. Unknown number. Local area code. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. I already knew what it would say. Something about confusion at the venue or technical difficulties. Maybe someone trying to find the groom. The man who signed every check but wasn't in any of the photos. The second call came from the planner. I recognized her number. I still didn't answer. The third came from Kristen. I let that one ring too. She tried again 2 hours later. This time with a text. Kristen, Mike, please, call me. Something's wrong with the accounts. I think there's been a mix-up. Mix-up. That's what she called it. By the end of the day, my inbox had 13 unread emails. For voicemails, 2 texts from Sean. One from his real dad, who I hadn't heard from in years. No apologies. No questions. Just accusations. Sean, is this your way of punishing Mom? You need to fix it. I didn't reply. They weren't used to silence. Not from me. I'd always been the one to smooth things over, to shoulder the blame, to say, it's fine. I've got it. Even when it wasn't. Even when they never once said thank you. This time I said nothing. That night, I turned my phone off. Sat in the garage with the lights off, the car door open, breathing the air like it had changed. Like something rotten had finally been pulled from the walls. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of choices, of years, of the sound a man hears when he finally stops apologizing for being taken for granted. For days passed. The calls slowed, turned to texts, then to emails. Then they stopped completely. I didn't hear from Kristen again until the following Thursday. She showed up at my door just after sunset. No makeup, hair unwashed, her eyes swollen, not from crying, from not sleeping. I opened the door and stood in the frame. Didn't invite her in. Mike, she said, voice soft, cautious. Please. I didn't say anything. She stepped forward, then stopped. Held out a folder, thick, creased, disorganized. I recognized it instantly. The wedding files, vendor contracts, credit card receipts. The ledger I'd built by hand over 6 months of quiet effort. It looked heavier now, like she'd finally realized it had weight. She opened her mouth again, tried to smile. You're going too far, she said. That was it. That was her line. Not I'm sorry. Not you didn't deserve that. Not Sean was wrong. Not even I see now what you did for us. Just you're going too far. I didn't answer. I took the folder, reached behind the door, handed her another. She blinked. What's this? Copies, I said. Every payment, every freeze, every authorization, legal and binding, all through my business. Every vendor contract runs through the company, not me personally. That means I can cancel them, which I have. Her lips parted. No sound. There's also a non-liability clause, I added. Standard practice. Anything unpaid after service delivery isn't my responsibility. The moment I voided the account access, I voided the obligation. She stared at the pages, fingers trembling. You're leaving us in debt, she whispered. No, I said calmly. I'm leaving you in reality. She looked up at me then, really looked. And for the first time I saw fear. Not fear of punishment. Not fear of loss. Fear of the truth. Of the quiet, inarguable math behind what I'd done. You can't just walk away, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Haven't I already? She left without another word. No slammed door. No scream. Just retreat. The silence stretched. Sean didn't reach out again. Not directly. But his lawyer did. The email came 2 weeks later. Vague threats. Legal language dressed up as righteousness. Something about financial interference, damaged expectations, emotional distress. My attorney, a man I'd known for 20 years, replied with a single-page PDF. It contained every vendor contract, every transaction ID, every business document linking the wedding expenses to my corporation. No fraud, no breach, just the removal of funding. Clean, dry, legal. 3 hours later, the lawyer backed off. Said they'd reconsider pursuing the matter. Because that's the thing about respect. It doesn't live in words. It lives in paper, in signatures, in silence that's louder than screaming. It lives in what happens after the applause fades. Kristen never moved back in. I didn't kick her out. I didn't change the locks. I just stopped speaking. I stopped showing up. I stopped fixing the things no one thanked me for fixing. She texted once. You could have just told me you were upset. Upset. I laughed when I read it. Laughed for the first time in months. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. Like telling a man who'd been digging graves for a decade that he seemed a little tired. No, Kristen. I wasn't upset. I was done. Sean stopped using the Volvo. I found it parked outside a bar 2 towns over. Dead battery. Cracked windshield. I had it towed. Not to my house, to a scrapyard. Sold it for parts. The guy gave me $300 in cash. Said it was barely worth that. I told him it was the best deal I'd made all year. The final invoice came from the photographer. She emailed me directly. Said she understood what happened. That she didn't want to get involved. But she needed to be paid. I wrote her back. Send the full gallery to Sean and Kristen. They'll know what to do. She replied with a single sentence. I already did. They haven't responded. That's when I realized something. They didn't just lose funding. They lost the story. There would be no wedding album on the coffee table. No framed photo of a smiling bride and groom. No viral video of the toast that made everyone laugh. There would just be silence. A hole where a celebration used to be, and no one to fill it. I moved out 3 months later. Bought a small house on the edge of Stonebrook. Older place. Cracked porch steps. Gutters full of pine needles. First thing I did was fix the stairs. Took me an afternoon. Wood. Nails. No applause. No one watching. Just me. Just work. Just peace. I wake up early now. Make coffee. Sit in the kitchen with the windows open. No phones. No notifications. No requests for money. No demands for patience. Just silence. I found the wedding invitation in a drawer last week. Cream cardstock. Gold foil. Our names embossed like it meant something. I held it for a minute, then dropped it in the trash. Didn't need to burn it. It was already dead. I get updates sometimes. Through people. Through noise. Little ripples of gossip. They say Sean moved back in with Kristen. Lost his job. Blames the economy. The school he wanted to apply to for grad work never processed his application. Probably because the balance was never cleared. Probably because there's no real dad to step in. They say Kristen's planning to sell the house. Can't keep up with the mortgage. Says she was blindsided. Tells people I changed overnight. Says I was always a little off. No one asks about the bar tab. But I still hear the story. Guests from that night. Recounting it in pieces. There was this moment, they say, when the screen turned red, everyone was confused. And that's all they need to know, because the rest was never really mine to begin with. There was no announcement, no post, no message sent out to the guests who came to the wedding expecting warmth and left with questions. I didn't make a speech. I didn't write a letter. I didn't correct the stories that followed me like a bad smell. Let them talk. Let them guess. The truth wasn't meant for them. It was meant for me. Because when you give and give, when you pour yourself into people who never asked for your presence but always expected your support, the only thing you ever really get in return is the clarity of their silence. And now I had it. Kristen never officially filed for divorce. She didn't have to. There was nothing left to divide. The house was hers before me. The debts were hers after. She stayed quiet, kept her distance. Sent a single envelope once. Paperwork I didn't open. Didn't need to. I'd already signed the only thing that mattered. The withdrawal of my presence. You don't need to argue with people who only valued you for what you paid for. You just stop paying. Stonebrook was colder than I expected. The house I bought sat at the edge of town, tucked between a dying maple tree and a drainage ditch full of rusted soda cans. No HOA. No noise ordinances. Just space. Just silence. The first night I slept there, I didn't hear anything but wind. No footsteps. No television. No car doors slamming in the driveway. For the first time in decades, no one needed me. Should have been lonely. It wasn't. I fixed the porch in the first week. Cleaned the gutters in the second. Replaced the water heater in the third. It all cost less than Kristen's flowers did. I paid in cash. Felt the weight of each dollar leave my hand like shedding skin. Not waste. Just closure. I started keeping a folder. Not full of bank statements or invoices. I'd done that for too long. No, this folder held something else. Printed emails. Notes I'd written to myself over the years. Photos from birthdays I wasn't in. **TS of texts that once made my hands shake with quiet anger. A paper memorial to a life lived in the shadows of other people's expectations. I opened it sometimes not out of bitterness, but to remember, to keep myself from forgetting how easy it is to disappear when your only value is your usefulness. It's easy to become a ghost. It's harder to realize you were one the whole time. I heard about Sean's collapse in fragments. A friend from the bank called me. Said Kristen was trying to remortgage the house. Said there were complications. Another friend, a cousin of one of the groomsmen, mentioned that Sean was back home, between jobs, and figuring things out. The Volvo I restored never registered in his name. He tried to sell it, but the papers were still mine. DMV wouldn't clear the title. He gave up. He'd always assumed everything I gave him would stay his. Even the parts one didn't sign away. One afternoon in November, just after the leaves turned but before the first frost, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name. The handwriting was uneven, like someone trying to seem calm while shaking. I didn't open it right away. Let it sit on the table for 3 days, next to the unpaid water bill and a pile of coupons for pizza places I'd never visit. On the 4th day, I opened it. It was from Sean. 5 sentences. No apology. No explanation. Just a request. If there's anything left in the college account, I'd appreciate it if you could transfer it. Things are tight. I'm applying again soon. I know you don't owe me anything, but I'm asking anyway. No, dear Mike. No, thank you. No, I was wrong. Just the handout. Even now. Even after everything. I didn't respond. I didn't even shred the letter. I put it in the folder with the others. Next to the photo of his graduation, the one I took, the one I paid for, the one where I'm standing just outside the frame holding a coat and an umbrella while his real dad shakes hands with the dean. That was always my place. Behind the camera. Behind the curtain. Behind the bill. So no, I didn't respond. I let silence answer for me, because sometimes the only way to be heard is to say nothing at all. I don't regret it. People think I must. That I sit here in this quiet house, staring at walls, longing for the chaos I left behind. But what they don't understand is that silence isn't loneliness. It's liberation. It's what remains after you stop living your life as collateral. Some mornings I walk down to the lake. There's a dock, half-rotted, that juts out into the water like a question never fully asked. I sit there with coffee and watch the sun crawl over the surface. The wind moves different here, slower, more honest. I once saw a father and son fishing off the dock. The boy was young, 6 or 7. His legs dangling over the edge, swinging like he hadn't yet learned caution. The man stood behind him, not saying much, just watching, present. The boy caught something, shouted, turned to his father, eyes wide, waiting for praise. The man knelt down, smiled, put a hand on the boy's back and said something I couldn't hear. But I didn't need to hear it. I'd spent too long giving that kind of praise to someone who never turned to hear it. I stood, walked back to the house, and never returned to the dock again. I still hear from people. Not directly, but through the same channels gossip always travels. Thin voices carried by thicker silences. He really just walked away? I heard he's living in the woods now. Didn't he pay for everything? Why would he do that? Why? Because sometimes the only way to win is not to fight, but to stop playing. Sometimes the only thing you can save is yourself. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not telling this story for pity, or revenge, or closure. I'm telling it because I need to know. Did I do the right thing? Was I cruel to pull the rug? Or was I just late in realizing the game was already over? Kristen said honesty matters. Sean said he had a real dad. They were right. And now they're paying for it. With interest. So I ask you, you who hears this and wonders what it's like to give everything and be given nothing in return. Would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying? Or would you have finally, quietly, let the silence speak for you?